tutorial basically focus on week 2 lecture, right? Approaches to system development, right? So I just loaded that in case if I need some assistance. Okay. Right. So let me take the tutorial file first. So tutorial file. So this is the tutorial we need to do today. Let me. Yeah. So let's. All right. So basically, week 2 we focus on system development approaches. So we talk about SDLC core processes, right? So basically, what we mean by the system development life cycle? System development life cycle is a kind of a project management methodology. How we going to organize all the development activities, right? System development activities in a logical way, so we can produce more quality product, right, at the end. So that is the basically the focus of system development life cycle, right? And then we have 6 core processes in there, because each core process produce some output which will take as an input into the subsequent core process, right? So how we going to organize these 6 core process depends on the project, the nature of the project you are working on, right? Nature of the project, it depends. Okay, so that is what today's tutorial focusing on, how you're going to organize it, or what are the things we need, so what are the other approaches we have, etc, etc. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the basic question first. Now this is this question is going to you know I mean to focus on some tools and methods or techniques we used in development activities, but it related with your assignment work, right? Now if you consider an assignment, anything, now think about the assignment you are going to do in INF20015, or even done in the past in, say, for example, your database class, right, last semester. So explain the terms, techniques, technique and the tool, and then describe some techniques and tools that you use to accomplish those assignments, right? So the first thing first, so we need to know what do you mean by the technique, what do you mean by the tool, right? So you have something, some project work or the assignment work, so you apply, you take some techniques and tool to complete it, right? The same principle applies to system analysis activities or system development activities, right? So we need to use some techniques and tools associated in specific system development methodology and apply that to produce some output, right? All right, so if you relate that concept to the assignment or the project work you have done in the past, so how are you going to apply these two terms? So that is the question, right? So what do you mean by the technique? What do you mean by the tools? Right. Right. So now let's think about it this way. So you may have used lots of tools, right? Now, for example, if you think about database, so what are the tools you have predominantly used to complete the assignment? Notepad++, right? As a tool, so you use it to write all your scripts, right? Your scripts have written in Notepad++. Then we use a draw.io tool to draw entity relationship diagrams, right? And then also we may have used OneDrive to save our work, right? And also probably we may have Microsoft Word to produce the output. For example, if you run your queries using ISQL Junior, now that is ISQL Junior is another tool, I would say, or Oracle is a tool. So then you produce some output, you run the queries, and you copy and paste it to the Word to produce output for the users or the management or for the tutors, for example, here to me, right? So these are the tools. So these are the software products which we can utilize to construct something in development activities, right? In this case, in your assignment, he has to complete the assignment activities, right? So the technique means, what do you mean by the technique, by the way? So in order to use this tool, we need to have what? We need to have some sort of instructions, right? So instructions are coming from the assignment itself, right? So instructions are telling you what to do, what to produce, what's format that the products has to be, etc., etc. So all these stuff are called techniques, right? So we can say they are the guidelines or instructions to complete some activity within a system development life cycle, right? So these are called the techniques. So the assignments also, we have these guidelines, right? So we need these guidelines, we need this instruction, and then we need these tools to complete some specific requirements in the assignment. Okay. So if you apply that principle to system analysis, so it's actually the same. So every system development activity or system development projects, I would say, have its own ways of doing the work, right? So they have specific instructions, specific guidelines, depending on the nature of the project, right? So that means we need to have specific tools to apply to that particular context, right? It can be the development tools, it can be software re-engineering tools or case tool like or maybe any other platforms, etc., etc., or cloud technologies. So we need the tools based on the technique and the context of the project we are working on. Okay. Right, so that is the answer actually we expect to write in the question number. And I think it's a very straightforward. So the basic lesson you can learn from this question is to clarify the difference or distinction between these two, right? So techniques and the tool, because these are the two important aspects in any system development methodology, right? So system development methodology can consist of these two aspects or these two important areas. Okay, right. So if you can write something something like that, okay, and relate it to your assignment context, you get the full marks for these kind of question, right? But you need to have kind of explore or explain it a little bit. It's not like one line or two lines. It's required you to give you a little bit explanation and relate it to the specific context, right? Right, so that is the answer to that question, right? Right, now let's go to the second question. So I'll give you some points. Now I think the first question is very straightforward. You can write in your own words. So let's move to the second one, system development methodologies. Okay. So the question asks, there are literally thousands of system development methodologies in the information system field. Remember that I told you, right? Some methodologies actually developed by the companies themselves, by going through their learning experiences of the past projects, right? But some methodologies we can even buy it from off the shelves. Sometimes it's thousands of dollars worth of methodologies there. Okay, so each methodology contains the instructions, tools, and etc. etc. To how to complete development activities. So give a kind of a guidelines with the tools. Okay? Right, so the question is, in this case, asking us why we need, what are the reasons, suggest some reason why there might be so many system development methodologies are in place, right? So that is the question we need to answer. So how are we going to answer that question? How are we going to answer that question? So if I now, what are the points? What are the key points for the question number 2? What are the key points? Right. So so what you can tell here in this case, in this answer. So first we can mention why we need some sort of methodological approach. So why we need a methodology. By the way, that's the first thing we need to clarify. So why we need a system development methodology? Because there are lots of constraints, right? So we have constraints in resources. It can be physical constraints, or it can be even the human constraints, like we don't have kind of necessary expertise in the organizations, right, to do every activities in the system development work, right? So in order to get the system designed and implemented the information system more effectively in the organization, we need to have some kind of methodological approach, right? Because of these constraints. So we have so many constraints, right? So just mention that in the answer, okay? So human constraint, physical constraint, other resource constraint, etc., etc. So that is why we have the methodology. So what do you mean by the system development methodology? As I mentioned before, so you can mention that little bit in the second line. So you can mention, okay, so it refers to basically step-by-step instruction or steps that we can follow to plan and control the process of development of information system, right? So we can say it's a kind of, give you kind of a steps that we can use to develop systems in the organization, or plan and control the process of developing the information systems in the organization. So you can mention that in that answer, right? And then we can tell, okay, right, so why we have many information system development methodologies in place, because the nature of the projects are quite different to each other, or the context of the project, right? The context where the project are going to implement or start is quite different to each other, right? So the context, right? Because some projects are actually are very straightforward, right? So they have a kind of a risk involving the projects are very low, and also we can easily plan. We can know the what is the software product we are going to produce, or what is the system we are going to implement, because the problem and the opportunity are very straightforward. We can see it, we can plan it, we can communicate it with the necessary stakeholders without having any issue, right? But in some circumstances, I mean, I would say in the most of the circumstances in today's more highly sophisticated business world, most of the projects are very complex in nature, right? Because the reason is the technology is changing time to time, because when we start the project and by the time we implement the system, probably technology probably completely different, right? That is one reason. The other reason is changing environmental conditions, right? Competitive conditions are keep changing time to time. So so we can say contexts are changing, so environmental changes, competition, so all these things, competition, so all these things actually will give a kind of a complexity to the given project, right? So that is the reason why we have so many system development project, right? So we need these projects because it's virtually impossible to drive forward a project without having proper planning method or without having a proper methodology in place, right? It doesn't matter which context we are we are developing the system, maybe more agile or maybe more straightforward, more what do you call this, more very straightforward kind of projects. It doesn't matter. So whichever the project, we need to have a plan, right? So that is why we have this methodology, right? So basically, what are the methodologies we have discussed in that lecture? So that maybe you can mention that in here as well. So there are many methodologies, but basically the methodologies can organize in two forms, right? So we have a waterfall approach, right? Waterfall waterfall approach to develop the system. So what do we mean by the waterfall approach? These 6 core processes in the system development life cycle actually flows like a water, right? One after another. So we first clarify the problem and then develop the complete specification, and then we design and then we implement, right? So we are not going back in the waterfall approach, because if the problem is straightforward, if you know the product we are developing, the classic example is the enrollment problem. So enrollment, student enrollment, we know exactly, okay, student enrollment, what are the parameters that impact in that project, what are the other variables impact, all right? So environment basically are the pretty much constant. So we can see the product we are going to produce. So in that kind of environment or kind of context, we can use the waterfall approach step by step. We can plan it, we can properly forecast it, financial impact of that project, etc. Properly forecast, then it's easy, right? So, but there are some projects, as I mentioned, we can use some other method like more iterative type of approaches, right? Iterative approaches, right? So, in the iterative approach, how the iterative works is we break down the problems into problem or the opportunity into smaller components, and then we work iteratively to solve the problem, right? So in this case, in iterative approach, we are going through each core process or each 6 core processes iteratively until we produce the final product, right? So basically, in the iterative approach, we usually trying to implement the riskiest parts first, right? Because then it's easier, right? So later on, it's easier to plan, because once you tackle the riskiest, more complicated or more what do you mean dangerous parts, right, in our system. So then the rest of the work is pretty much easy. Then we can get a kind of a clear idea once you tackle the complicated parts first, right? So by using the iterative approach, then we can actually find out the quickly whether how many times, what is the total kind of costing, more kind of can get a kind of an idea once you pass through these riskiest parts in your the riskiest parts in the project can be different form. It may not necessarily the technological aspect. It can be a cultural aspect as well. So most riskiest parts sometimes in the projects organization culture, because humans or the people users are very reluctant to change, right? So how are we going to overcome that, right? So that is what that is what the iterative approach is looking at. So we need to go through some iterations until we finalize the product, right? And then I have actually talked about more other approaches, like a more kind of what you call this spiral approach to system analysis, spiral methodology. Now, actually, this spiral methodology, remember the spiral methodology, we going through the, like a spiral thing. I have one slide in week 2. So in that spiral methodology, it's allowed the teams to adapt multiple, I would say multiple system development models in a manner that we focus more riskiest items in the early stages of the project, right? So I would say actually the spiral approach is a blend of the iterative and waterfall approaches, because it's a kind of it has a little bit of a planning as well, right? Because we need to plan the first iteration, and then we produce a sort of prototype, right, based on the first iteration. So that is one of the main characteristic of a spiral approach. So there's a quite big challenge in the spiral approach. The spiral approach, the most important, I believe, the challenge is, this is from my work experience, most important challenge is knowing when is the right moment to move into the next phase, right? When are we going to move into the next phase? So that is the most critical challenge, critical decision that project team need to make, right? Um, um, so yeah, so they can actually use different approaches, like this, to develop methods. So that is the one reason. And then actually I haven't discussed this in my lecture, but we have actually very newest forms of development approaches in today. They have, I mean, researchers have come across the new ones. So they call actually what do you call this, DevOps. We call Dev. I don't know whether you guys have heard that word, DevOps methodology, right? So I haven't discussed this in my lecture, but this is something new. So I thought that I'll give a kind of a so DevOps methodology is something actually like something like this. Okay, something like this. It's a kind of a now you know that internet, basically the internet technologies have transformed the current world, industries, right? Right, our shopping experiences, entertainment, banking, right? So their software is probably no longer a kind of a tool that supports the business, right? Then now we consider these IT has become more integral, more strategic in every part of the business, right? So usually companies or organizations interact with customers through a kind of a software platform. So that is through the software application they interact with the customers, right? So sometimes they can deliver the products even, right? Deliver the service through these applications. And then they can use these applications, software application, to improve the operational efficiencies by transforming every part of the value chain, right? So if you think about the value chain, you know the value chain in the organization, right? So value chain from the sourcing the materials until we produce and delivering the product or service to the final customer, there is a added value, right? So if you think about these added values in the company, right, it can be manufacturing part, it can be human resource, it can be accounting, marketing, whatever, right? The value chain, right? So every sort of value chain activities now it depends on in IT applications, right? That is why it is strategic, right? Um, so so what DevOps actually, it's a kind of a philosophy, right? DevOps is a philosophy. It's bring the development teams. You can see here people. It's bring the development teams together with more operational teams in order to streamline the delivery and the support. That is what we mean by the DevOps, development and operation. So the people are working around the clock in that project, right? Development people, business people, right? Technical, more kind of so they are coming up. I mean, we have technical, more system developers or something. And then we have quality assurance people, right? So there has to have kind of some people bridging these developers and the business kind of operational aspect, because they need to have some quality assurance people in place to see whether the application they develop collaboratively a quality has some quality pass to the quality standard. So I would say DevOps, like, right, so go through the cycle, right? So development team, they do something, and operational team also cooperate and monitor how the developer. So it's like a kind of a teamwork. So they work in streamlining the delivery and so I can say it's like something like let me take one other, if I can take it. It's like something like this, right? So development, operation teams, quality assurance teams, they work as a team. It's a kind of a cultural change. So they work on these development activities. So it's a kind of a combination of, I would say, cultural philosophies, practices, tools to increase how the organization, or to increase the organization's ability to deliver the application and services in a, I would say, in a high velocity, right? So high velocity means evolving and improving the products faster pace than traditional development methodologies adapt, right? So you can see these traditional development methodologies like this actually didn't fit in this kind of complex environment, because it has a lagging time, by the way. But if they work as a kind of a team, and every team members derive from different parts of the value chain, work as a team, probably they can actually more adaptive to given conditions, right? We can speed up the development activities to better serve our customers, or compete more effectively in the market, right? So there are so many benefits actually in the DevOps, like yes, of course, it speed up the development activity, because you can innovate the customer, innovatively produce something for the customers more faster, because you can see the teams are derived from different parts of the organization in these development activities for the application, right? And then it will easily adapt and change the markets better, because the knowledge are coming from different aspects of the organization, right? And so that means it will efficiently drive the business results. Okay, so that is one of the key aspect of this DevOps kind of development methodologies, because it enables the developers and operational teams to achieve these results very quickly, right? So that is one of the key, I would say, one of the key important benefit in recent methodology, because of the constant change. And then the other important benefit, I would say, in this sort of environment is the rapid delivery. So because it increases the frequency and the pace of releases, because if you think about the development activity in the real life project, we need to release, we are not actually release the whole product or whole software at once, right? That is a normal thing, right? So we release it release it part by part or component by component. So if you work in this sort of DevOps kind of environment, of course your release can be more frequent, right? More frequent, and also you can innovate and improve the product, or software product, I would say. Software product more faster, right? And the other important thing is, when you release these product more faster, the other important thing is you can fix the bugs fast as well, because the users can detect when they operate this particular application. So they can communicate these feedback back to the development team, then they can fix it faster, right? Because you can fastly respond from the customers. And then it will actually give a competitive advantage for the companies in that way, right? So that's another thing, right? And then the reliability of the product or the software product can be increased as well, because it ensures the quality of the application updates, and any changes in the infrastructure can be updated very easily, reliably, rapidly, while maintaining more positive experience for the end users, as I mentioned, because we have the quality assurance team work tirelessly with the development team as well, right? So yeah, so for this question, actually, you don't need to talk all these. These are the additional knowledge I just give it to you. So you can see this question is asking the reason why we have, because these are the reason, right? So when you go through these things, you will see the why we need these sort of methodology, because the rapidly changing environment, competitive advantage is very important, and then the technology is changing, so that's why we need these different approaches to organize our system development activities, right? I think I have given you a very solid big answer for this question, right? So you don't need to write everything, but I just give some extra information for this. Okay, right. So that is about that question too. Now regarding maybe you can think about DevOps, right? So DevOps, just think in your back of your head. This is the latest methodologies now adapted by companies, most of the companies. Right. Now we are now moving to question number 3. Okay. So any questions regarding? Can you guys give me your thumbs whether is it clear the answer to question number 2 before we move into question 3? Because I'm just only talking. I don't want people just getting bored because it's just one way. Is it clear, guys? Can you send me your response? Is it clear? Your answer to question number 2. Maria says yes. How about the others? Michaela, are you with me? Precious, Joshua, Darcy, Callan, Ayub. All right. Okay. So he says, everyone says yes. All right. So let's move to actually I like your engagement as well, because it's not good to just I'm just speaking. Yeah. So let think about this question number 3, and let's I want your engagement in this question before we move to right. So let's read this question, and I want everyone to give a kind of your thoughts, right? Right. So when dealing with the client as a consultant, it's important that both the client and the consultant have an appropriate expectations and the understanding, right? Inappropriate expectation and understandings can lead to great deal of frustration, and a poor outcome. So inappropriate expectation. Okay. Here are some typical client situations, right? Now these are the typical client situations. So they have given 3 situations. So the client has a little idea of what they need. So in this case, they don't know anything whatsoever. Even they don't know what's the problem is in the company, right? Yes, that can happen. Actually, I worked in some project. Sometimes, we don't know. We know there is a problem, right? We know there is a problem, but we don't know how to actually define it. We don't know exactly how we're going to define that problem, right? So we don't have any idea. It's really sometimes happened to me as well in some sort of projects. The second one is the client think they understand the problem, right? But actually doesn't. Probably they know something, but it actually that is not their understanding is quite different to the actual real situation. Right? Third scenario, the client understands their problem, but doesn't understand the available options. So what we mean by this is, of course, because the clients, if you think about client like, remember last week we discussed a case study that Dudley owned a cafe, and then he requested to us to produce a sort of uh, spreadsheet package, right? So in that case, client is a Dudley, a cafe owner. So they knows very well in their business operation. They know the business processes very well, right? Isn't it? But they don't have specific understanding about the tools, right? What are the tools? How are we going to apply certain tools to overcome certain problems or to grab the opportunities, right? So that is what the third option telling us, right? The third one tells us, okay? And the fourth one, the client understands the problem and the options and is looking for the best deal or best solution, okay? So what we mean by that is, yes, client have a better understanding of there are a range of alternative tools, right? But how to choose the tool? How to choose the correct tool to given context, right? So that is what the fourth point is actually telling us, right? And then here are some of the roles that the consultant, what do you mean by the consultant? By the way, guys, here is system development consultant, right? So think about we as a system developers. We are the consultant, right? So here are some roles that the consultant can handle, okay? Right, so there are three roles. First role is I am an expert, right? What it says is ask me any technical question and I can answer it, okay? Expert. I am here to sell something. I got some really good deals, right? So I'm here to sell something. The third role is I'm a doctor, right? Tell me your problem, I'll recommend something for you. So you know how to solve the doctor solving problem. When you go to the doctor, doctors first ask what's your symptoms, right? And then they recommend some sort of a solution or medication based on your problem or issue, right? So right, so it's just a home. So right, so what the question is asking, we need to match the different client situations, right? So we have 4 client situations and the roles, and suggest some potential problems of the frustration. So try to putting it into the concrete situation. Example, someone wanted to buy a new sound system for their homes, right? So Edgar Schein, reference below, suggests that the consultants should start open mind and to be prepared to adapt the role the role most appropriate at the time. His approach is probably the best summarized as an help. So I am here to help you with your problem. What can I do for you? Note, however, that the Shane's attitude is that the problem belongs to the client and the consultant should not allow the client to be offload the problem to them. All right. So how are you going to answer this question? So what we need to do is we need to match the client situations, right? So we have a bunch of client situations. And then the roles, right? Now you maybe actually play one of these roles in your career in future, right? Who knows, right? So if you're more technical kind of person, probably your role is the first one. I am an expert, right? You have more expertism in one particular technical area, so you can answer any question that comes from that particular area. Or you maybe work as a kind of a very marketing type of person in the software industry, right? So you may able to give range of solution or good deals for the clients, right? Or this is what I actually like, doctor, right? So doctor is the person who probably first, it's a problem solver, right? Want to solve problem, dig into the problem, try to break down the problem, and then recommend a solution based on the problem. Okay, right. So how are you going to match these things with the client situation? Now, if you think about the first two client situations, client has a little idea of what they need, right? So they don't have any idea about do they really need a software application or any application at all, right? They are doing their work, but do they really need to improve something, etc., etc. Second situation is the client think they understand the problem, so they may have a kind of wrong problem under, they wrongly identify the problem, probably that is not the case. So in these kind of two situations, which role, which consultant role is best, you think is applicable in these two, right? So what is your thought, right? So I think that these first two looks bit of the same. So what is the role best applicable in this sort of situation? Any idea, guys? And then if you go to the last two, right? And what are the other roles that we can match from these three to the last two? Right. So I need your input, and uh, let's get your feedback, and then we move on. Right. So Callan, Ayub, Michaela, Maria, Joshua, Darcy, Ryan, Spencer. So we have 90 in at the moment. So I need your input, everyone. So just let me know. Okay, so let's go one by one. First two, right? So first two roles, right? For the first two situations, what is your recommendation? Which role that best suits in the first two? So I'll give you 1 minute or 2 minutes to think. Any idea, guys? Anyone who like to contribute? First situation with which role are first two situations most appropriate? Let's give a chance to Maria, Michaela. What's about your thoughts about these two? Which one is best match with the first two situations? Any idea? Who else? Darcy, can you answer? Callan? Precious? Noah? Josh? Ayub? Anyone, please? What's... Yes, true. First one is the best for the second role, I think. Okay, second role. Right. This one. Do you mean the okay? This I am to sell, right? Do you think that's good for these two? Now, in the first two, now let's go through again. The first two situation, the client has a little idea, right? And the client think they understand the problem, but doesn't, right? It's like I'm going to a doctor. I am saying, okay, I have a fever, right? I think my fever is because of this, right? Or otherwise, I go to the doctor and saying, okay, I don't have any idea. I don't know why I'm getting the fever, right? So in this sort of situation, what is the best? I think the best is the last one, isn't it? The doctor's role, right? Doctor's role, because the doctor's role is to go through the problem solving cycle. Remember the problem solving cycle we discussed, right? Starting from the scratch, right? Even that now here it says to tell your problem, yes. Sometimes even problem is not visible, or it's clear, then we can actually dig down into more and more. We can analyze the problem, and then we can recommend something for that particular problem, right? So the first two situations, I believe the most important role that the business analyst should perform is the doctor's role. Okay, and think as a doctor, how the doctors are performing, right? So that means this role requires us to go through the entire problem solving cycle. Remember the problem solving cycle, right? Steps very thoroughly in order to solve the best solution, right? In the first two scenarios. Okay. So that is the answer. But if you think about, say, this one, the client understands the problem but doesn't understand the available options, right? Yeah. So the third one is they know the problem, right? They know the problem but doesn't understand the available options. I would say for the one, I would say probably the first role, right? The first one, because ask me any technical question and I can answer it, right? So an expert's role is best suits in the third scenario, okay? Because here in this case, there is a reasonable understanding of the problem by the client. Probably this role. So it depends on which, yeah. So if you are more technical expertise in some area, you can give a solution. Okay. And then the last one, the client understands the problem and the options and looking for the best deal or the solution. In that case, of course, I can suggest, yeah, the second one. I'm here to sell the product, right? But my basic my suggestion is the most effective role that you should adapt is the doctor's role, right? Because it doesn't require you to, I mean, thoroughly, you know, understand the specific technologies, but in overall, if you go through the problem solving cycle, probably I believe you can get the most of the solutions for all these situations. Okay, so that is the idea actually I'm trying to tell you here, because we may in our career journey we may adapt one of these roles, right? Without thinking the holistic way of how to solve the problem. That might be a bit of an issue in some circumstances, because I have seen in some of my colleagues who work in the industry, they are more focused on these stuff, right? But when it comes to actual problems solving situation, in some problems in their client company, they are making a little bit difficulties to overcome that. Yeah, so the last one is the best one, but in this situation we can apply apply the different roles, but I would say the last one is the best for any given context, right? Right. So system developer must think like a doctor. That's the last idea. That's the idea I need to give it to you. Right, that's about the question 3. Right, so now we can move to theory questions. Sorry, case study questions. So we have, I guess, bunch of two case studies, and then we have some theory questions here. Right, so let's go through this question number 4. Read the description and then make a list of expected business benefits that the company might derive from the new system. Okay, so they have given a small case study and they ask us to pinpoint or write some business benefits. Now remember, this is one of the important thing that we need to extract for our business case or system vision document, right? There are two important things in the business vision document or system vision document: business benefits and business capabilities or system capabilities, right? Business benefit. So in this question, specifically asking business benefits, right? So how are you going to find out the business benefits in this case study? So we need to actually have a look what's the actual problem they are facing and what's they like to overcome. Now let's read this problem very carefully. Swinburne Jewelers is a small jewelry company in Hawthorne City. Over the last couple of years, it has experienced a tremendous increase in its business. However, its financial performance hasn't kept pace with its growth. All right, so that's a question problem, right? So they increases their business, but their financial performance looks like going down. There's some symptom, right? Some problem is going there. The current system, which is partly manual, right? Now that might be the reason, partly manual, right? And partly automated, doesn't track the accounts receivable sufficiently. That might be the reason. What do you mean by the accounts receivable, guys? Account receivables means debtors, right? Debtors. So that means they may sell their products for the client, so the clients pay it late, right? So they have probably looks like that might be the reason, yeah. So they may have lots of debtors or the clients without having a lot of arrears, because they are not tracking their payment. Probably they are not tracking sufficiently account receivable aspects, because it says they have the manual and partly automated. That might be the biggest symptom, because of course they need to impact their financial performance, right? Even though their sales are high, right? They can sell the products, but actually eventually they are selling for a credit. So we are not getting that the repayments sufficiently, because we don't have we can't track it sufficiently. That is why our financial performance are down. So that might be the reason, yeah. Sufficient, and the company is finding it difficult to determine why the receivables are so high, right? So okay, so they don't have capacity to analyze these creditors or credit clients credit more in detail, because they don't have that kind of sophisticated system. So it runs frequent special to attract customers, but it has no idea whether these are profitable, or if the benefit, if there is one, comes from associated sales, right? There is no link can be established whether the sales or their specials that they run have kind of impact on the sales. Swinburne Jewelers want to increase the repeat sales to its existing customers, right? Thus, it needs to develop a customer database. All right, that is a requirement. It's obvious, right? So if you need to overcome these stuff, one of the main reasons that they can't do this, because they don't have appropriate technologies in place to analyze their customers' probably behaviors, how their buying pattern works, how their payment works, right? Are they paying in on time, etc., etc., and what products they have bought. So probably they didn't have kind of a system to track and relate all these variables, right? That might be the biggest problem, isn't it? So it also want to install a new direct sales and accounting systems to help to solve these problems, right? So we have these problems. So the main problem is to track the account receivables, isn't it? Right, now imagine that now we are trying to implement a database, right? A customer database that we can link the sales, and then whether that sales have generated from a specific marketing that we have conducted, they says here, and then how often the customers have been paid, right? What is their credit limit, etc., etc. All these stuff we can actually derive from this sort of database, right? So obviously, then we can get a kind of a better idea the financial performance uh, with idea with how the financial performance works. In other words, right? Right. So what they asking us to do is to list some business benefits, right? If we implement, now we know the problem, we know the solution they are going to implement. So basically, the one centralized database with some capabilities, direct sales and accounting capabilities. So, what benefits or business benefits we can derive? That's the question is asking us to discuss. Right. So the mainly what you can tell here is all right. So there are two things, right? The thing is business benefit in terms of, yes, of course we can increase the profit. So there are two ways we can do that, right? Either we can reduce the cost, or we can increase the sales, right? So you can actually give some benefits, how you give some idea how we're going to reduce. What are the benefits of reducing the costs, right? So essentially, probably we can reduce. We can say the one of the benefit is so this question number 4. So I write the answer here. Question number 4. You can mention about how the benefit of reducing. Reducing operational costs, I would say. Operational costs. So how are we going to reduce the operational cost if we implement this database? So think about, right now this is a jewelry shop, right? So sometimes most of the clients probably comes with their requirement, or maybe we can, they come up with a kind of based on they may have their own requirements, so they can prepare the product according to their requirement, right? Rather than selling the products that we already have. Okay, so in that case, we can just reduce the operation cost because we can accumulate cost in the database. So if we create that customer database with an appropriate other tables associated with the sales and the costs, right? You can accumulate the costs associated with the product costing, right? And then see how we're going to reduce the cost or the continuously improve the cost in a specific situation, right? So that is one of the basic advantage from this particular system. So we can definitely reduce the operational cost by analyzing the cost patterns associated with a specific sales or customer sales based on customer sales database. Right, so that is one thing. And then we can improve, the second part is we can improve sales, right? So improve the sales improvements. So how are we going to improve the sales? Basically, because if you have a database, customer database, we can easily target each individual customers based on their buying patterns, isn't it? So we know exactly the history of what they have bought, which patterns of jewelry they have bought, right? We can analyze it if you have a more effective customer database, right? And then we can plan a strategy how we're going to provide them with a newer, better products, right? We can target them with a better product, so they will definitely come again. So sales improvements is a one important aspect that you can increase the sales revenue, right? Sales revenue. So you can say that is one of the benefit. What else? What are the other benefits that you can actually think about in this sales database? If you put, sorry, the customer database. So other improvement I would say is improvement in I would say inventory controls, right? Inventory controls, isn't it? Because we don't need to unnecessarily, because jewelry is a very high-end product, isn't it? Right? We don't want to stock too much of costly products in our stores, right? Because if you know exactly how the customers buy, which products, which patterns of jewelry the customers are buying, in certain, sometimes some certain, it might be the maybe seasonal, right? Seasonal thing, right? Summertime people buying some certain, I don't know, but we can analyze it, right? We can get this knowledge by analyzing the customer database. So that actually helps us to control our inventories, or control or keep our inventories more effectively, so we can target our customers. So that is one of the other benefits. And then of course from about these two strategies, right? Sales improvements, and with the improvement in inventory, of course we can retain customer loyalty, right? Customer loyalty, isn't it? So that is one of the, I would say that is one of the key business benefit that company can derive, especially this sort of high-end jewelry kind of product. And then yeah, so that is one of the case. And then of course, most importantly, according to this problem, is we can now get a kind of an idea how they are paying, or even we can give the credit. That is doesn't not big a big deal, but we can analyze the credit of the customer credits, how all these credits are, right? How all these credits are, whether it is 90 days old, or 60 days old, or 30 days old, right? So we call it as aging, credit aging of the credit, right? So we can analyze this aging of the credit, and then we can target some sort of customers. How we're going to send some automatic replies or something like that. How are you going to recover their credits more often, right? So we can, that means another benefit is we can specifically target high credit customers, with appropriate strategies, right? Appropriate strategies, right? So I would say that's one of the main business benefit in this particular situation, right? Right. So I think these are the 5 most important business benefits that company can. Yes. So Ching, you are right. We can track the customer payment. Yeah. That actually this is the customer tracking customer payment, isn't it? That is tracking customer. You are correct. Payment more efficiently. Tracking customer payment more efficiently, right? I would say, yeah, that's what we mean by that, right? So if you have written these 5 things, right, and justify it, then of course you'll get the full marks. Okay. So likewise, the same approach you need to put into your case study, right? So that you are going to start in this way, right? Because business benefit, identifying the business benefit, one of the key aspect in the system vision document. So you need to analyze it. You need to read one by one and break down it and then come up with this logical don't put more generic stuff. I really want to analyze the problem like what I did here, right? So right. So that is about that case study. Any questions, guys? If you have any questions, any clarification, please ask or send a reply. Okay. Right. So that is the answer. Right. So let's go to again. I think the same narrative again. Right now, this time they ask us to develop some system capabilities. Right now, let's read the same narrative but little extension. The new direct sales and accounting system for Swinburne Jewelers will be an important element in the growth and the success of the jewelry company. So obvious, right? So from these business benefits, we know that this is a potential development opportunity. The direct sales portion needs to be tracked every sales and be able to link the inventory system for cost data to improve the daily profit and loss report. Okay, so they want the daily profit and loss report. They want to track every sales that link to every inventory item. So we may have different product categories, and then what they want is to link that product categories, sales and product categories, and construct or develop a statement, profit and loss statement for each product category. The customer database needs to be able to produce the purchase histories to assist management in the preparing the special mailing and the special sales to existing customers. That is what exactly I think we talk that we need sort of that we need the capability to target the customers, right? So that is what we talked earlier. So detailed credit balances, so detailed credit balance and the age accounts for each customer would help to solve the problem with the high balance of accounts receivables, right? Yeah, so what we can do here in this case, what they say is age of the account. So as I mentioned before, the age of the credit can be 90 days or 60 days or 30 days old. So we can, target them precisely. That's what it says. Special notice letters and credit history reports would help management to reduce account receivables, right? If you can generate some, time to time, some sort of management reports, history reports, like some credit history reports, and it will give a management an indication how they're going to target these aging creditors, right? So that's what they ask. So what they want us to come up with are some kind of capabilities that we can adapt in order to derive these business benefits, right? So let's write the system capability. So this is the answer to question 5, right? Question 5. So what are the system capabilities that we need? So in this case, so one of the system capabilities I would say is we need to the first important thing is we need to track and retrieve details of the customer purchase. I would say purchasing patterns. That's actually one of the key capability. I would say purchasing pattern. So if we can implement capability that we can track relative because customer purchasing pattern for every purchase, um, then of course we can specially target, right? So that is one capability. Um, then as I mentioned before, the system need to actually produce some sort of profit or loss margin for every single transaction, right? That is another capability, that is another functionality that we need to implement, right? So we can say calculate the profit, you can say profit or loss margin for each single transaction. That's one of the, because now remember this industry, jewelry industry, is we are not supplying the cheap, small, very, these are very costly products. It's not a normal grocery kind of industry, right? It's a different ball game, I would say. Yeah, so that's the second capability. And then what else? What are the other capabilities that we can implement in this system to get these business benefits? I would say um, we can automatically maybe issue automatic maybe issue automatic invoices to customers. Probably that is a good idea as well. Customers whose we can say whose uh, uh, payment have been received. Um, uh, right. So if you send the kind of that, this is actually another good capability, because what I believe is if you issue the automatic invoices to customers who regularly pay on the spot, then it will actually kind of give a kind of a reminder as well the customers. Okay, I need to keep payment. So we can include including that invoice. Okay, what is the, okay, you paid this much, there's this much of remains unpaid, so the due date is this, right? So something like that, right? So we can include that in the automatic invoices, right? So it will what do you call, it will give you added benefit to customers, from company's point of view, to remind customers this is the outstanding amount. Then we can generate special mailings, special mailing about new products, right? So we can target the customers precisely, right? Which new products. So you know that when you subscribe to the newsletters, so we are getting specials, right? Weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, etc., etc. So that is another capability I would suggest in here. And then probably from the management perspective, I would like to see some kind of credit balances and age account for each customer, right, in detail, right? Because then the management can target specifically those customers. So elaborate, can say elaborate on credit balances, and aged accounts, right? Age accounts of each customer. If you have that capability in place, I would say that's greatly benefit. That's actually one of the core capabilities I would say we need to implement in this system, right? So that is one. And then again, if you read that case, the last portion, it says we need to produce some notice letters, right, and credit history reports, right. So generate notice letters uh, and credit history reports. That is one of the key, I would say, a capability the company should expect, or the establishing this particular new system. Credit history reports. Mm, so that's something. And then also maybe it's good idea to have the capability to remembering the customers who often purchase our products. So we can quickly process their orders, or in other words, we can say uh, so this is remembering. So remembering, say remembering details of say returning customers. So we well, maybe you can say customers for quick order processing, isn't it? There is another capability. Now, when you write these capabilities, probably you write it in a kind of even the normal business person can understand. We know that we can transform this into in in our IT domain, using IT domain keywords or jargons. But we don't expect that in this stage, okay, in the system vision document. Because we need to go more business focused, right? So business people can understand. Okay, so I would say actually these are the um, few, or 5 capabilities that we can 5 or 7, right? So we have some more capabilities that we can implement to derive these business benefits from that particular jewelry company. All right. So yeah. Okay. So this is what we need to do in the system vision documents. Okay. First, business benefits, and then okay, these are the capabilities that we can expect, we can implement to achieve that business benefits. All right. All right. Now let's move to is the question. I think this one. Okay. Right, so that is the answer to the question number 5. Okay, question 5. So now we can move to the question number 6. Do you have any questions or anything that you like to add for question number 5 before we move into question number 6? Any ideas or anything you want to add? No? Right. Well, let's read the question 6. Now these are general typical questions I'd ask in your final test, okay? So you should be able to analyze these sort of case studies. All right, so question 6. So what are the key differences between the predictive system development and adaptive system development? Are there any similarities? As the project becomes increasingly large and complex, how might this affect the choice of methodology chosen? I think I have addressed this question in my earlier discussion. So the predictive system development methodology means we can understand the requirements very well, or in other words, we understood the requirement very well, and then if we can document these requirements, or will define these document these requirements very well, so we can call these projects predictive kind of projects. We can predict, or we can exactly predict what kind of product we are going to produce in these particular development activities, right? So predictive projects. And the adaptive projects in the other end. So the adaptive projects, uncertain, the output is uncertain, technical risks are there, right? So so that kind of environment, we can actually use more adaptive types of project life cycle or development life cycle. So project kind of adapt more agile type of projects. So that is a basically distinction between these, right? So these are there any similarities between these two? Yes, the main similarities between these two is whatever the life cycle or whatever the adaptive or predictive we use, we still use these 6 core processes in system development life cycle, right? So we use system development life cycle. Doesn't matter whether it is adaptive, doesn't matter whether predictive, we still use SDLC, right? These 6 core processes. How we use these six core processes is determined by this nature of the project, right? So that is what you need to tell there. So as the project becomes increasingly large and complex, how might this affect the choice of the methodology chosen? Yes. So when the projects get complex, larger, then probably we may move to more predictive, to more adaptive type of, because the large and complex means there may be few more variables that we need to consider, right? There are more constraints that we need to consider. So probably adaptive of the predictive is not be the best suitable development methodology because of the complexity and the nature of the project, right? So the methodology is chosen probably change when the project become more complex and increasingly large, right? So that is what you need to tell in this question, right? I think this question is very straightforward. Okay, so don't have a kind of much things to looking at. All right, so that is the answer to the question 6. So if you mention these few dot points, probably you will get the answer, full marks. Right, so let's jump to the question 7. So what is the objective of each phase of system development life cycle? Describe each objective briefly. I think this is very straightforward. I gave you, I think if you go to lecture 2 or maybe lecture 1, or no, lecture 2, I guess. Yeah. So I think I have given in this lecture each core process. What are the basically activities involved in, right? So you can see here. So basically, if you summarize these 6 core processes, we can actually have a kind of, we can categorize into 4, I would say, right? First 2 core process, probably the planning stage, right? So planning stage basically investigate whether there is a problem and determine the business problem perspective, how we going to how to initiate the project, right? How to ensure the feasibility of the project, how to schedule the project, etc., etc. So all these things comes under planning stage or first 2 core processes. And then we have a analysis, that requirement analysis core process, right? So if you take it as a standalone core process, it is where we basically understand the business needs and the processing requirements, right? And we study the existing system, we develop the understanding of many interfaces with other systems, and probably output that we require to produce. So basically, the system specification is produced in the system analysis stage, and then the system design is another stage. So it integrates the network, application architectures, and probably the user interfaces, system interfaces, then designing and integrate databases, then prototype for the design details, etc., etc. And also some system controls like password protection, other security, kind of protections can be implemented at the design stage. And then the final one is the implementation stage, right? So we just construct the software, we verify and test other components and converting the existing data for the new system, and then we train the users, documenting the system, installing the system, etc., etc. All these stuff in the last final two stages, right? We can call it as implementation. So the planning, analysis, design, implementation. So these probably, probably we can say these are the four main areas that we can categorize these 6 core processes, right? So planning, analysis, design, and implementation, right? Right. So if you talk about these things later, and you will get the full marks. Anyway, the answers are there in the week 2. So I have given some activities in each core process you can actually go through and then write the answer, right? So planning is the first 2. This is third one is the analysis. Fourth one is the design, and then the last 2 probably are the implementation, I would say. Okay, right. So that is the answer to question number 7. Right. So let's do the question 8, and then we can wind up the class. So I'll keep this last case study for the Thursday's class. So it's a little bit, now this case study is very important because we, throughout this semester, we are going through this case study and we are applying the concepts and building the models based on this case study. And then you can exactly do the same thing with your project work as well, right? So I want to give a little emphasis into this case as well. I will keep this for Thursday's class, okay? Right, so the last question for today, question number 8, how is the iteration used across each phase? Iteration, right? So we know that iteration is one of the core activity or core method we use to solve the problem in highly adaptive environments or highly agile environments. So iterations are used to repeat the core 6 processes or core activities over and over again to identify why we put this iteration, because we need to identify required functionality and any other functionalities in development environment. So that is the main reason why we use this iterative approach, right? Functionalities, to identify the functionality, or even to identify the risks, right? Sometimes it's based on this iteration we can identify the risk, and even we can identify the future maybe fixing opportunities. If you think about, right, if you get the feedback from the last iteration, we can fix that our product or software product in the current iteration. So that is the basic idea, the iteration we use. So 6 core processes are repeating in each iteration until we solve the problem, right? Until we solve the problem. That is the basic idea, right? Right. I think I have given that in one of the lecture slide. Iteration. If I go, so if we go there, one of the slides. I think I have explained that. Yes, so iteration here, something like that, right? So you can read this slide before you answer for this question.